Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to do a little bit of a tier list because those are always fun. So we're going to talk about all the different races in Total War Warhammer 3. There's a fair amount of them and we're going to be ranking them on S tier all the way down to D tier, with a clarification being as follows. S tier being, yep, they're fantastic, they play very well, and extra DLC would just be bonuses for them. A would be, yep, they're great but they need at least a little DLC more just to fix them up. B would be they need a little bit more of everything. C would be they really need some help. And then D is, oh god, they need something actually quite large to make them playable. So there's going to be quite a lot to discuss here, as a lot of races and factions have gotten a lot of love during patches, during DLC launches, some reworks. A lot of them are a really good spot. My hope is that we'll eventually see everything in S and in A tier before the end of development for this game, and considering that we're likely going to get some touch-ups during every single major patch now, this could potentially be very good for the game. So yeah, let's discuss, let's have a little bit of fun, and yeah, let's talk. But before anything, a big thank you to our friends at Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. With Instant Gaming, you'll be able to purchase some games at a decent price, meaning that you'll be able to get your hands on Nordland, which seems very popular right now, for minus 48% off at €16. And if you're waiting for the big one, this is the one that everyone's waiting for, Space Marine 2 for minus 24% off, and this is the one that even provides 4 days early access, so if you're trying to avoid some spoilers, you can get your hands on it pretty soon. Pretty much all the titles available on this website are discounted, and making a purchase on this website also supports the channel at no extra cost to you using the link in the description below. Not only that, but we do have our monthly giveaway with Instant Gaming once again. All you have to do is sign up, click the link in the description below which says giveaway, and you'll be able to enter a completely free raffle to win the game of your choice at the end of the month. We've been doing this as a monthly thing with them, which has been absolutely awesome. A massive thank you to Instant Gaming once again for sponsoring this video, as it has been helping the channel keep alive during the content drought that we're currently experiencing whilst we're waiting for, well, we don't know what the next DLC is called. But with all that being said, let's return to our regularly scheduled programming. So we're going to start off with the Beastmen, as we're going to go alphabetical. It just makes a lot of sense, as that's the display that Creative Assembly has for the races. The Beastmen are in a very good spot. They released in a decent spot when it came to Warhammer 1 when the map was smaller, but when the map got much larger with Mortal Empires in Warhammer 2, it did make them a little bit boring to play and a little bit frustrating. That's been changed since the Silence and the Fury, where we ended up getting Torrox the Brass Bull, and also a very hefty rework for the Beastmen. At the time of recording this video, they have 4 legendary lords. 3 of them are pretty vanilla based. They have some stuff to kind of make them a little bit different, but the 4th, Torrox the Brass Bull, is the most unique. The Beastmen are a Horde faction, which historically Horde factions haven't been great for Total War, but the fact that you can build up a Hearthstone, effectively giving you a camp to spawn extra characters and also defend yourself with, makes them a lot better to play around with. This is a monster slash skirmishing focused faction which has access to a decent amount of laws of magic and has been getting a fair amount of attention in Warhammer 3 despite not getting DLC themselves. The big Chaos DLCs for the Monogods have slowly but surely been helping out the Beastmen, thus increasing their faction roster and also giving them a little bit of a touch-up here and there. The race itself has become one of my comfort races. When I just want to play Total War but I don't know who exactly to play, I'll end up playing the Beastmen because they feel really good. So for my ranking, I'm going to give them an A tier. And the reason why I'm saying this is because they're lacking a legendary hero right now. Khazrak, Malagor, and Morga don't have their own unique mechanics. It would be great to see them have something a little bit more unique for them, like for example Morga having access to all the different types of Chaos Spawn, Malagor having some sort of unique mechanics, same thing with Khazrak, and it would be nice to get a 5th legendary lord, maybe in the form of Gorus Warhoof, which could give us a lord and hero version of the Centaurs also, just for a little bit of variety. But as it stands, the Beastmen are in a very good spot, and A is a very good ranking. Next we're going to go into Bretonnia, and this was a race that was introduced in Warhammer 1 once again, but for free. You didn't have to pay for this one, so if you still don't have it in Warhammer 3, just go to your Warhammer 1 section, click download, and there you go. Once again, Bretonnia's roster is pretty full, and this is because the faction and the race of Bretonnia was largely ignored by Games Workshop, meaning that they had a army book since 6th edition that was used all the way through 8th edition, and that kinda made them struggle, which is a big thing. So your roster here is mostly focused on cavalry and archers. If you're not a cavalry focused person, this might not be the one for you. We've got 4 legendary lords here, 2 of them in the same location, one in Araby and one in Lustra ever since Warhammer 3. They've had a rework since they were first introduced. This was when Rapunzel was introduced, and they felt a little bit better. They've had a further touch up when it came to Warhammer 3, which unfortunately produced a lot more issues. They've since been fixed up. The faction isn't bad, but they do have some major issues that need to be addressed to make them in line with Game 3. Right now, I would say that they're still very much in line with Game 2. For ranking purposes, unfortunately, I'm going to have to put Bretonnia on B tier, and the reason is, right now, the characters aren't very unique. They don't really have that much distinction between each other. It would be nice to see them getting a really big rework here just to fix them out. The roster is quite limited. Unfortunately, this is not the fault of CA here. It's just more Games Workshop. In a perfect world, we would see Games Workshop allow CA to use some old world stuff because there is a few options that could make these a lot better. Knights on Foot would be absolutely fantastic and would help out a lot during siege battles, for example, where defending the wall with men-at-arms is really a good thing. Now, we could see some stuff coming for Bretonnia even if a DLC doesn't come in. A rework and an extra legendary lord. We do know, for example, that Creative Assembly have stated, oh yeah, it would be great to do Bohemond Beastslayer. So yeah, it's still possible to see these guys jump up to A or maybe even S tier. You never know. Now, B might not sound great, but let's be honest, for a free race, I mean, it's not bad. This is the only free race that we've had so far, by the way. We don't know if that's ever going to happen in the future, but it would be nice if we had one more free race to play around with. Alright, this one's the big one. Chaos Dwarfs. Introduced in Warhammer 3, the Chaos Dwarfs brought in a pretty large roster, 3 different legendary lords, a legendary hero, and a host of new mechanics. Some of them were reused mechanics, the others were introduced to be a structured host of mechanics which work together to be something incredibly detailed, meaning that the Chaos Dwarfs have one of the most structured campaigns that we've ever seen for Total War so far. Get yourself some laborers, turn them into materials, then make some armaments, use those to facilitate some trade, you use them with the caravans. It's so structured. I was actually very much impressed. I played the Chaos Dwarfs so much during the pre-release and then a lot after the release themselves. I am very, very impressed because it showed that Creative Assembly can do really, really structured things. And it's something that might not happen a lot for Warhammer 3, but would be great to see in future titles. I'm not just talking about Total War Warhammer 40k, if that ever happens, but stuff when it comes to some trade-focused factions, if we ever get them in like Medieval 3 or Total War World War 1 or whatever, you know? It's just great to see this as a possibility because, again, it shows that you could have really different campaigns but still being in the same format of Total War. You're still doing warfare the same, and let's be honest, the Chaos Dwarfs do that very, very well. So for that, I'm putting them on S tier. I absolutely adore the Chaos Dwarfs. Really, the only thing that I would say could be made better is the introduction of a 4th legendary lord would be nice in a different location, as right now, and I think this is the worst part for the Chaos Dwarfs, which is a good thing if this is the only problem. They're missing faction diversity in terms of start position, which I guess, you know, they're all together because it's the whole Tower of Tsar mechanic. It would be nice to see one that isn't focused on the Tower of Tsar and is focused on other matters, just to have something different, because all 3 of the current lords basically have the same campaign in terms of who you're fighting, with the only difference being when you're going to fight them. Next one is the Demons of Chaos. This one is the player insert character. So you start off with your character, you can name him whatever you want, this is your legendary lord, and you have access to 4 different rosters. All the monogod rosters, barring a lot of the humans, because you'll be focusing heavily on demons here. It's an incredibly unique campaign because it focuses on how you play. This being, if you focus very heavily on Khorne, you'll unlock more gifts for Khorne. If you focus very heavily on Slaanesh, you'll unlock more gifts for Slaanesh. And at the end of it, you can actually decide, well, I'm going to devote myself to either Undivided or one of the mono gods to get some bonuses that are very specific. You'll also be able to build up the character, and that means that you'll be able to play around and, yeah, build a bear, right? It's a very unique system. The big problem with Daniel is that a lot of work got put into there, and I can't help but think that Warhammer 3's launch kind of suffered because Daniel was a thing. Despite my feelings towards him, I'm going to give him an A tier. You see, it's an incredibly unique campaign, and to be honest, while I don't like Daniel personally, and I still think that his lore is kind of cringe, I still feel like Daniel as a character, as a playable faction more so, is rather interesting and rather unique, and we've not really had this before. It's something that I'd love to see repeated with other characters and other factions, maybe even some generic stuff too, because that Build-A-Bear system is really, really good. What I would love to see for the Demons of Chaos as a whole is maybe a unique legendary hero just for him. He can get other ones, but it would be nice to see an Undivided one come into effect, and maybe the possibility of Be'lakor being able to either play as a Warriors of Chaos faction or as a Demons of Chaos faction, so you can have Be'lakor playing as the Undivided leader too. The reason why I say this is because I don't think that we're going to get another legendary lord for the Demons of Chaos. It's fine if we don't, but it would be nice to get that option for Be'lakor to be able to play as that campaign. Dark Elves next, and you have a bunch of legendary lords. They did get a lot of attention during Warhammer 2. So you've got FLCs, you've got DLCs to play around with. The DLC characters end up being quite unique, same as the FLCs in some sense, because Rakarth is very unique in his own styling. Lokia could do with a little bit more, to be honest. I really do like the Dark Elves. They've got a great roster, pretty much representative of what they are in the tabletop, and that's really, really good because the Dark Elves were always a fan favorite back in the days. The variety is also quite nice. I feel like you have a lot to play around with. A lot of the Dark Elves are in different locations, so you've got faction diversity in terms of start positions, which is really, really important, especially for a game like Warhammer, as the last thing that you want to do is have everyone in Naggaroth fighting themselves, right? Ranking-wise, however, I'm going to have to give them a B tier, mostly because, well, they got shafted with the money-making. The new rework, or mini-rework that they did get for the Immortal Empires was quite decent, but you still miss out on a lot of money. The other thing is, there's major characters like, for example, Malekith and Morathi, which don't really play very unique, which is weird considering that they're the big faction characters. Now, some people might be saying, well, Morathi did get the update where she's able to get some demonettes, and she spreads Slaanesh corruption. It's not enough. It just felt like a bit of a half-assing over there. She should have access to the lore of Slaanesh, for example, and she should have access to more Slaanesh stuff, very much in the styling of the Cult of Slaanesh in the Storm of Chaos. Malekith could do with something very unique. He is the leader of the Dark Elves, after all, and maybe something for Lokia would be great, to be honest. They could do with a legendary hero, they could do with maybe one DLC. Many people were hoping for Slaanesh versus High Elves versus Dark Elves, and I'm still kind of hoping for that, but we're going to have to wait and see. Alright, time for the Dwarfs now. The Dwarfs have just recently received their third and hopefully final rework. They've got a decent amount of playable characters, and yeah, they've had a decent amount of DLC. The biggest one obviously being the Whole Thrones of Decay one. So you've got some variety in terms of start position. The roster is very good. Obviously the Dwarfs are very focused on melee combat and range combat, and also just a lot of guns, but no cavalry, no skirmishers. It's a big thing. I feel like the Dwarfs are very much representative of what they were in 8th edition, and also going back a few editions to get some older stuff that has finally come into the game. They're very playable now. The rework has been very good, and it's made them a lot just more fun, which is a big thing. And it does show Creative Assembly's commitment into bringing certain races and factions in line with Game 3, which is very, very important because the game series has changed so dramatically over the years. Ranking-wise, I'm going to give them an A. They are really fun to play right now, and I feel like they're just going to get better as time progresses. My big issue is that a lot of the factions within the Dwarves don't really have unique mechanics. We've got Thorgrim, Ungrim, Belegar, Thorek. They're just kind of left alone. Belegar has a unique mechanic, but let's be honest, it kind of sucks. Malachi is very, very fun, even after the nerfs, which were kind of expected, but it would be nice to see the others get something unique for them just to make them feel like what they are supposed to be. And ultimately, it would be nice to have another legendary hero, you know, one that isn't a slayer, and maybe even another legendary lord just for another start position. It would be kind of nice. This is why I think that character packs could be a great thing in the future, just to kind of flesh out the races and factions with missing characters. I don't think that the Dwarfs will get another DLC, which is a bit of a shame considering that loads of people wanted rune golems and stuff like that, but I guess maybe Games Workshop might not want that. It depends on how things go. Still, they're in a very good spot and I'm very happy. Alright, Grand Cathay now, and this is a faction that was introduced for Warhammer 3 and hasn't been a faction in Warhammer Fantasy since, like, I don't know, 2nd edition, I think? Ooh. It's a long time ago. But they are getting remade for Warhammer the Old World eventually, and this is Warhammer China. They've got 3 legendary lords at the moment, one of them being quite unique, and even then, his uniqueness isn't really unique. It's more of an extension of everything else. Cathay needs a lot of fleshing out, unfortunately. I think that's a big thing, because you do have a lot of options, but right now you've got, I don't know, white dragon, black dragon, green dragon, dragon. That being said, the faction is very fun to play because it's very similar to the Empire, but focuses very heavily on, you know, harmony instead. You've got a lot of strong troopers. They get stronger when you've got them mixed up. It's a pretty interesting concept, and we do have some new large monsters coming into effect. It's something that a lot of people have been waiting for, and it's very exciting to see. That being said, I'm going to have to give them a B tier, and that's not a bad thing. Keep this in mind, right? I think that they're going to jump up to A or even jump up to S tier as time progresses because, let's be honest, we know we're going to get more DLC for Cathay. There are 2 missing active dragon children and everyone's expecting the Monkey King. So that's like, what, 3 DLCs? They're likely going to get more legendary heroes. They've currently got 1. So it's not that they're bad to play. It's just that since we know more or less what to expect, they kind of feel a little bit empty. Pair that with the need for Miao Yin and Zhao Ming to have something fairly unique. I mean, Miao Yin kind of has one, but it's more of an annoyance more than anything else, I guess. It would just be nice to see them touched up whilst we're waiting for the other dragon children, the Monkey King. And yeah, we'll see them jump up all the way to S tier in no time. Definitely means that they're going to be treated like the Skaven were in Warhammer 2. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I do feel like some races do deserve a little bit more love. Alright, Greenskins now. We have a bunch of legendary characters. We have a huge roster, which is only going to get bigger, by the way, at the end of this year, because we're expecting, well, it's not expecting, we know there's a DLC coming that has Khorne, Ogres, and Greenskins. I am very happy with them. Really, the Greenskins are one of my favorite factions from Warhammer Fantasy because they're so fucking silly, right? The Greenskins are never to be taken seriously, yet cause so much destruction in lore, it's actually quite hilarious. You do have a lot of subcultures there, like goblins, standard orcs, savage orcs, black orcs. Forest goblins would be nice to see a little bit more of attention, and standard goblins too. But yeah, there's a lot to play around with, which makes them incredibly diverse, and it's only going to be better once we start seeing the introduction of Gorbad Ironclaw and a bunch of other units. Let's hope that we get some pretty interesting ones. They had a rework in Warhammer 2, and it did make them a lot more fun. Greenskins are in a very, very good spot right now. So for ranking, I'm going to put them on A tier, because as it stands right now, without whatever this new DLC is called, I would put them as an A tier, and I could see them becoming an S tier if, and it's possible if we see this in the next DLC, the factions end up getting some unique mechanics, you know, something unique for Grimgor, something unique for Azag. It would just be great to see that happening, and obviously a fix to Karakate Peaks, but I don't think that the Skarsnik update is going to happen anytime soon just yet. Really, I could see them, yeah, as an S tier. Hell, if Games Workshop allow for this, because I think it's a Games Workshop issue, and Creative Assembly end up doing this, and we end up getting, you know, all the missing Lord variants and Hero variants, because there's a lot for the Greenskins. I would even create a new classification for them and put them at S tier plus, right? Like, it just makes sense. There's like, oh my god, 30 missing unit variants, and there's like 12 missing Lord and Hero variants, if not more. It would be great. I know there's loads of mods that allow for that, but it would be great to get them officially. I, for one, would absolutely love for Creative Assembly to do a Savage Orc Lord and Hero, because I like playing Savage Orcs, and if you've been seeing my rants on Twitter lately, I absolutely adore Savage Orcs. Alright, we got the High Elves now, and the High Elves are in a very, very good spot. You see, they've got a bunch of characters, most of them have something unique. Pretty much the only characters that don't have anything unique for the High Elves are just the 2 base game Legendary Lords. Their roster is pretty good. Eventually they're going to get a DLC, and it's just going to finish them off. One more Legendary Lord would be great. Some legendary heroes would be awesome. But yeah, they play like they did on the tabletop. Incredible range, very good melee combat when you look towards the White Lions and obviously the Swordmasters. And you've got a lot of playable stuff. They're in such a good spot that I do enjoy playing the High Elves, but they do need a little bit of a fix here and there. A proper High Elf rework would be great too, just to really bring them in, right? There are some things that I don't like about the High Elves. For example, having to use influence to recruit lords is a bit disappointing, or else you're stuck with some crap, but other than that, they play incredibly well. For that, I'm just going to give them an A tier. Really, they are in a very good spot as they stand. I know some people aren't too keen, but I think one more DLC, one series of updates, so fixing up Teclis, Tyrion, and a little bit of a touch-up in terms of rework for the High Elves, and they're sorted, they'll jump up to S tier. I think this is a really good thing. A lot of races I feel are going to be jumping into A and S tier, B being not too bad too, but the High Elves are in a very, very good spot. I enjoy playing them. I enjoy playing as Imrik, I enjoy playing as Alifanar. When it comes to unique mechanics, even if they're kind of small, because let's be honest, they are kind of small, it does bring in a lot of variety, and it does give you replayability too, seeing as all the High Elves are spread out, barring 2 of them in Orth 1. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with them. Khorne is the first monogod faction that we'll be talking about, and I really enjoy Khorne, which is weird because I didn't really like them at the beginning. And they're getting a DLC at the end of this year too, obviously alongside the Greenskins. There's only one Legendary Lord, Skarbrand. Skarbrand is fun, right? It's just literally switch your brain off, do some damage, go on, right? The roster is very much focused on melee. Some people complain saying there should be more range, but that goes against the foundations of Khorne. You have some range, and even then that's a bit too much for my liking. But yeah, I mean, the faction is in a really, really good spot. I feel like there is a lot of potential here. Skarbrand obviously won't have a unique mechanic when it comes to the future, unless Creative Assembly figured that they have enough time to do something. But he's fine, because he's supposed to be basic. Just, you know, unleash the Bloodthirster and do some damage. I'm pretty content, and I'm really excited for what potentially could come. For Skulltakers, we know that's the next Legendary Lord for Khorne, and what Legendary Heroes we might get, hopefully Sylar. And if the stars align, we'll end up getting a FLC Legendary Lord too, which would be great, because that would take it up to 3 Lords, and that would give you pretty much all that you would need for Khorne. I'm going to give him an A tier. Khorne is simple but fun. It's just switch your brain off and beat shit to death with your axes or your maces or anything that you might have on hand. I am a very big fan of the playstyle. It's just super chill, and it fits incredibly well with the lore of Khorne. If we end up getting Sylar as a legendary hero, Skulltaker as a legendary lord, which is already confirmed by the way just for the Skulltaker situation, and an FLC legendary hero, then yeah, I think that S tier would be a big thing for Khorne, and I think that they'll get there with no problem. I do want to see a extra Lord in the future. Scar Bloodwrath would be kind of cool, but I think that that's something that we'll see in an End Times DLC. But yeah, if all these things end up happening, they'll jump into S tier without a problem. Doesn't have to be complex, just has to be there to kill stuff. Kislev next. So another faction which actually existed in Warhammer Fantasy back in 6th edition as a supplementary faction actually, and then got remade for Warhammer the Old World and obviously Total War Warhammer 3. Right now it's pretty bad. There's a lot of mechanics and only one Legendary Lord is actually unique. The other 3 are taking part in the same mechanic, 2 of them actively fighting against each other and the other one being a support faction. But that I think Kislev suffers because you've got 3 Legendary Lords, Boris, Tsarina and Kosteltin, basically being so close to each other and having the same mechanic that it makes them kind of boring. Then you've got Mother Stankia, who is fairly unique. She's in a weird location, but I tell you what, after some time I have grown to like her. This was a bit of an issue with her where her DLC was kind of lackluster. Everything got a little bit better, obviously, and it does make her a bit more playable. Also, now that we have a unique lore of magic associated to her and her heroes. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to put Kislev on C tier for now. You see, their roster is decent. They have some fun stuff. Obviously, a lot of stuff is hybrid, which makes them very powerful. But it seems that they're lacking a lot of direction. The Tsarina needs something unique to her. Konstantin needs to focus around the churches. Boris needs something rather than supporting other characters whilst he's busy fighting in the Chaos Wastes. We have a legendary hero, which is great, but I don't know, it just feels like Kislev, there might have been a plan and that just got distorted as the game progressed in terms of development. Admittedly, yes, they do feel a lot better now, but there's a lot of shying away when it comes to that, which I do feel is Games Workshop's fault, not so much Creative Assembly's. There's no mention of Ungles, even though Ungles are mentioned in game. Where are the Ungle heroes? Where are the Ungle lords? Sure, they're represented in one way, shape, or form, but it feels odd that that's missing. There seems to be a heavy focus on monsters too. Historically, Kislev wasn't that. It was more humans, you know, being the bulwark against chaos. No chicken house too, which is a massive shame. This is Games Workshop changing the lore, and I don't know. I do find it a little bit of a struggle to get into new Kislev, where old Kislev, especially with all the lore that we had for Kislev, seems to be kind of briefly touched upon rather than touched upon properly. Lizardmen, oh my god, so a bunch of legendary characters. They got a lot of attention during Warhammer 2. Multiple DLCs, multiple FLCs, it's a really big amount of stuff. The roster is pretty much complete and they do have a lot of monsters to play around with. This is the faction and the race that is going to be playing around with a lot of monsters and a lot of melee combat. It's something that has always been embedded into Lizardmen lore. You're not going to get a lot of range. You do have some range, and it's fairly decent for what it is as a skirmishing range unit. I like them. I really do. I want to like them more. The problem is that they had content releases alongside Skaven, and it really screwed them over. For that, unfortunately, I'm going to have to give them a D tier, and it sucks because I do like the Lizardmen, but there's a lot of factions which just play like vanilla. There's nothing too unique about them, which kind of sucks. There's 2 legendary lords which are quite good. Nakai is better now, and Oxyotl is fantastic. It's probably the best Lizardmen campaign that you can play, but it does suck that you need DLC to have the fun Lizardmen experience, I guess. There's also the case with the tech tree being absolutely atrocious. It's awful. Absolutely awful. Probably the worst one available right now to the factions and races of Warhammer 3. And then obviously the Geomantic Web just feels very meh-worthy. I think that a good rework, a good centralized rework, can skyrocket them all the way up to A tier. Really, really can do that. But time will tell if they, well, not if, when they get attention, because they did mention the Geomantic Web. I just hope that that's not the only thing that they're fixing. It's, again, this is my opinion, but I've got a few thousand hours in just Warhammer 3 alone, and I just don't like playing the Lizardman. Oxyotl I can play, no problem. I can do a full campaign with him and have a lot of fun. I still think Nakai needs a little bit of a fix here, but yeah, it's a race that has really suffered. Oh boy, Norsca next. So, yeah, Norsca exists. They were introduced in Warhammer 1 as a Warhammer 2 race, but playing as a Warhammer 1 race, which sounds confusing, but unfortunately is just what happened. 2 legendary lords, nothing special about them. The roster's pretty empty, pretty much only 1 lord choice too. It feels very, very empty. I don't want to talk too much about Norsca, unfortunately. It's just, there needs a lot of stuff to be done here. And just flat out, I'm going to give them a D tier. I could give them F. F minus. It's one of these things. They were introduced. They were fine for Warhammer 1. They were shit for Warhammer 2. They're awful for Warhammer 3. They had a fix in Warhammer 3 which made them a little bit more fun. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that they're still missing Lord and Hero options, they're missing some potential units to kind of make them a little bit more fun. A lot more monsters would be great. Maybe a proper rework for the 2 legendary lords. Frog being king of the monsters needs to be incentivized to use more monsters, having access to monsters that Norsca would normally not have access to. Wulfric needs to be able to travel more. He is the Wanderer after all. And another legendary lord would be great. Maybe in Skeggy would be cool. There needs to be something for Norsca. A Tribes of the North situation would be great. We've seen that works well with a mod, and it's something that we've talked about for many, many months prior to that mod coming out. something needs to be done, because right now it's the one DLC that I would just not recommend to anyone unless you're looking to play with the mods. But you shouldn't have to download mods to justify paying for a DLC, that's for sure. Nurgle now. So 3 Legendary Lords, a fairly hefty Nurgle rework recently, a very good DLC too. Originally they were one of the worst factions of Warhammer 3, but have slowly become one of the best ones. Slowly, get it? Because Nurgle's a slow faction. All of the characters have something unique to them. Kugath being able to spread super plagues, Epidemius being a faction to get loads of bonuses, being a tallyman, and obviously then we've got Tamukon, who is the antithesis of friendship is magic. I really like how Nurgle is right now. I think that Thrones of Decay turned one of the worst factions into one of the best factions. I'm very, very pleased, and it shows that with time and care and attention, every faction can end up being really, really good. You might be surprised here, but I'm going to give them an S tier. I know, it sounds weird, but Thrones of Decay finally finished off Nurgle in terms of making them a great faction. I think I used to put them down with F and D, so it's really good to see them so high up ranking at the moment. I'm very, very pleased. I'm very, very happy. Really, all they could do with now is maybe getting a Lord and some units during the End Times, the Putrid Blightlings and so on. If we end up getting a End Times DLC, if we don't, I'd still be very happy with where we stand. Very, very content. Very, very content. And I think that this is a standard for Monogod DLCs right now. If the Khorne DLC is as good as the Nurgle side was for Thrones of Decay, fucking yes, that's great. That's what I hope for in terms of attention for Slaanesh in the future also. And hopefully we get another thing for Tzeentch to fix them up a little bit. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with Nurgle. I don't generally like Nurgle, but yeah, this has been great. Ogres. Alright, so they're getting a DLC soon, so I wouldn't panic too much. Right now, 2 Legendary Lords. A faction which is kind of unique because it's focused very heavily on monstrous infantry. It's a difficult one to play in some cases because you will be dealing with a lot of anti-large and you have a lot of smaller unit numbers. They can be kind of squishy in some cases, but you can boost them up. They have had fixes over the time that Warhammer 3 has existed. Back then, there was an absolute limit for camps. Not so much now. You can get them as time progresses thanks to tech. The roster's almost done, and to be honest, yeah, I mean, they play well. They just need some fixes here and there. Another Legendary Lord, a Legendary Hero. But the main thing is giving an Ogre rework, which we can kind of expect is coming. So there's not much to talk about here. I'm going to give them a C at the moment, mostly because I feel fairly optimistic. They play all right. It's just, if the camps can move, if you get better contracts, and maybe something just to make the Ogres a little bit more interesting in terms of playable factions, yeah, they'll be fine. I don't think there's much to talk about here. I am feeling optimistic. If the next DLC is as good as Thrones of Decay, shoot them up to an A tier maybe. I don't think they'll ever be an S tier, but I'm fairly happy with how things are going. Alright, Skaven. So, lots of Legendary Lords, lots of fun, awesome roster, lots of attention, let's be honest here. The majority of the attention in Warhammer 2 was mostly centered around the Skaven. A lot of factions are incredibly unique. A few of them aren't, unfortunately. The Clan Pestilence, Clan Rictus, and Clan Moors aren't. Well, Moors has something but could be touched up a little bit. Yeah, the Skaven are in a stupidly good spot. We know that we're going to get more Skaven in the future. Thanquil's still missing. There's not really much to say here. They're in a really, really good place, and they're only going to get better as time progresses. Honestly, at this point, it would just be nice to get a ballpark of when we're going to get Thanquil. Not so much because, you know, Skaven attention, but just so people could shut up about Thanquil, because, yeah, it happens a lot. I'm going to put them in S tier now because they've gotten a lot of attention. People love Ikit, people love Fraught and the Deathmaster too. Really, this is one of those races where I'd say could get an S plus tier. All that's really needed here is fix up the whole 8 peaks mechanic for Queek and everyone else involved in that race. Something unique for Rictus. Plagues for Skrulk, please. CA, please. And just bring in Thanquil, Vermin Lords, and anything else that is missing, which there isn't a lot of stuff missing. Storm Fiends and all that. But yeah, this would be one of those races which get an S plus if everything is done. There's nothing to argue about here. They're just in a really freaking good spot. Alright, Slaanesh, my favorite faction. Only 1 Legendary Lord at the moment, but very unique mechanics. Stuff which has then been stolen by the Dark Elves. But yeah, Fast moving. This is a skirmishing anti-armor faction. I love them. I'm a very big fan. We know that DLC eventually is going to happen. You know, I think Rich Aldridge said 3 times in the video interview that, yeah, don't worry, Slaanesh fans, we're not forgetting about you. So, you know, there's hope. There's hope. I really just want to see DLC for this. I'm happy with how it stands right now. The Nakari start is not great. Mostly because the faction that you're fighting against is geared to dealing damage against you. But, I mean, it's incredibly lore-friendly, so it fits very, very well. I'm going to give them an A tier. Literally all they need is a DLC and an FLC Legendary Lord, and I could consider them done. I know some people would say, well, you're a big Slaanesh fan, you'd want more. But, yeah, I'm happy. I'm honestly very, very happy with how Slaanesh plays. I really do think that more Legendary Lords is a good thing here. So another Lord T'Challa and then maybe Stirkar would be great, as it's very obvious. I had a lot of fun using a mod which turns Azazel and Sigvald into the Monogod factions instead. So it shows that just extra star positions works very well. A unique mechanic here and there, obviously, to make them a little bit different. Done. Sorted. Alright, Empire now. They ate so well in Thrones of Decay. I am so freaking happy. Karl Franz has a unique mechanic now. Geralt has a really fun campaign and very unique too, which is super, super cool. Hell, he even got a magic focus campaign before other characters which are heavily focused on magic did. Obviously, Elspeth came in, Landship, Ironsides, Engineers, Steam Tank buffs. Everything feels great for them. I am really happy with how the Empire is right now. Not only that, but like, come on, it's the Empire. They're tried and true. They've got a little bit of everything. I think that a lot of people are genuinely happy with how they are. And I think that this is just a really good push for them. The only thing that I don't like is that we're still missing a bunch of stuff. But as it stands, even all the factions have something unique for them. Volkmar too. It's great. I'm going to give them an S tier. All they need is DLC. Cult of Ulrich, maybe some character packs to introduce other legendary lords as the Electricants, some legendary heroes, and that's it. Yeah, they're in a really good spot. I really enjoy playing the Empire. I know I'm not alone. Karl is one of the most played legendary lords in the history of Total War Warhammer, and I think that this is just going to keep getting better if we end up getting Boris and the rest of the Cult of Ulrich. It'd be nice, and this is, again, the gods known as Games Workshop, if it would, you know, get us some lore tidbits for missing churches, like the Cult of Tal and so on. But I would say even if we just get the Cult of Ulrich, that's fine. Yeah, no complaints. Really happy. Alright, the Tomb Kings. I mean, oh my god, there's so much that we could talk about here. A race that was introduced into Warhammer 2, which set the standard for future race packs. Not only are they a very much beloved faction from back in the day, but also incredibly unique. They play very differently to other races, which is very, very important because races should feel different to other races. 4 legendary lords, while not unique, barring Arkan, are quite distinct and very important in the lore. They're in different locations, though 3 of them are very close to each other. Yeah, the roster's great. Everything about them feels good. They're missing a bunch of stuff, but it does feel like a precedent was set here with the Tomb Kings that continues to this day, thankfully, barring the little snafu with the Ogre Kingdoms. I'm just going to give them an S tier. They really shaped the foundation of what Total War Warhammer was to become with race packs, and it's something that needs to be used moving forward for future Total War games too, when they start introducing different cultures to historical games and so on. Stuff like this is great. I love them. Really, the only thing that I would like to see is a DLC. Just having another Tomb King. It would be nice to get a legendary hero also. Some basic missing units, like the big stuff. Though, mind you, the grand majority of the Tomb King roster is actually in there. And, yeah, maybe a little bit of uniqueness for Cetra, Khalida, Cathay. That would be great. But really, as they stand, if they don't get anything in the future, I'd still be happy. This is the main thing. I feel like the Tomb Kings are in a very, very good spot. Alright, Tzeentch. Oh boy, the Shadows of Change drama that never actually finished. 2 legendary lords, admittedly very unique playstyles. You've got the standard Total War style playstyle with Kairos, and then something incredibly unique when it comes to the Changeling. The roster is pretty good. Feels very, very good, in fact. The mechanics for the faction, alright, could do a little bit of touch-ups here and there, but still very, very unique. I think the big problem here is the Changeling does feel boring, because once you do him once, there's no incentive to do him again, and there is no FLC Legendary Lord, which would have actually given a little bit more love to Tzeentch, as right now you don't have a lot going for you, and that kind of is disappointing. Kairos is fine. He's very strong at the moment. I feel like he's in a much better place ever since the Zangors got introduced. But yeah, there could be a few touches here and there. When it comes to ranking, I'm unfortunately going to have to give Tzeentch a D tier. Yeah, it's because Shadows of Change wasn't completed. The DLC is not done. We didn't get an FLC Legendary Lord, which should have been a Tzeentchian one. The Changeling needs a few changes. Basically, he should have the option as soon as you start a campaign on what theatre you should start with, or at the very least, give him the option to have a standard Tzeentchian campaign, just so you can have some replayability, rather than just, you're going to start in the same place, going to go through the same motions. Another Lord, Egrim Van Horseman, is something that people have been asking for a long, long time. Yes, Creative Assembly had gone on record saying, no, there's still stuff that we could do for Tzeentch, which is very, very good, but it's still... it should have been done during the Shadows of Change 2.0. I think that's a big reason why I don't like Tzeentch so much. Faction as Kairos plays very well, but I think that the drama still brings it down. Kislev's still a bit better off, and Cathay is actually in a better spot. Tzeentch suffered. Vampire Coast, okay, a faction which was a supplement for 6th edition, made it as its own full race. 4 legendary lords, each of them quite cool, one of them being a new character. So Noctilus, Aranessa, and Lufa Harkin have been in the lore for a decent amount of time. The Fat Opera Singer was invented for specifically this DLC. I like her. I like all the characters. I don't like Aranessa as a Vampire Coast character, though. She should have been her own thing. If the Dogs of War ever happen, she should be moved out. Not entirely sure if that's actually possible, but I mean, it would be nice to see. As a race, I mean, who doesn't like vampires? Who doesn't like guns? Put them both together, boom, right? It's the Gunpowder faction. I like them. I think that they're really cool. It's nice to see a throwback to 6th edition being so very universally loved, to the point that they were turned into a full race pack. Here's hoping, knock on wood, that they end up becoming a a playable faction when it comes to the old world. But until then, I'm pretty content. I'm going to give them an A. I very much doubt that they're going to get DLC in the future. And I think that's pretty much because there's like nothing that exists for them in the lore. However, really what they need is something kind of unique for Noctilus, Harkin, and Fat Lady. Well, Lady has already some Bretonnian stuff, but, you know, a little bit like Epidemia-style uniqueness would be cool. They all have their own mechanics, like the Grand Declarations of War and the Insanity and stuff, but a little bit more would be great. Legendary Hero would be lovely too, but other than that, I mean, they're in a very good spot. They're right now suffering, and they could do with a little bit of a rework, that's for sure, but yeah, fairly content. Alright, the Vampire count. So a decent amount of Legendary Lords. I was going to say a bunch, but not really a bunch because they all fall on the same family. 1 Legendary Hero, technically. It's one of these weird things. A very good roster. I know some people aren't too keen on that, but yeah, I mean, that's the Vampire count. That's how it's always been. And yeah, they play very, very well. They can actually be considered quite overpowered too, depending on how you play or if you play against them. I've always liked the Vampire counts. I always really thought, hey, you know, this is one of the best interpretations of a Warhammer Fantasy race into Total War, because, yeah, no range units. Well, you can get some, but very, very limited. I just wish there was more, and I think that's a big thing here, and that's a thing that a lot of people have been asking for. They lack variety in terms of the other bloodlines. Sure, you've got some representation of them, but they're not really there, if you get what I mean. I'll give them B because they work very, very well, but they could easily jump up to an S tier if we finally got a Champions of Chaos style DLC for the Vampire counts. So a Blood Dragon, a Necrarch, a Lemian, and a Strigoi Legendary Lord, just to have in the ones that are missing. Obviously, people want Neferata, some people want Yushoren, Wersaran, and obviously then, I don't know, anyone for the Blood Dragons could kind of work. I know a lot of people want Abarash. So yeah, you know, stuff like this is quite important because it's variety, and a big DLC like the Champions of Chaos could easily fix this, make the factions quite unique, and there you go. It's important because the vampires do feel very samey. Hell, even the Necromancer factions are a big reason because of this. So who knows what happens in the future, but I really hope that Creative Assembly are still keeping the Champions of Chaos format in mind. I know a lot of people are just saying, well, Nagash could fix that up, but Nagash should be a separate DLC. That's my opinion at the very least. I think there's a lot that could still be done for the vampires, and here's hoping that we start to see that. Hey, time will tell. Alright, Warriors of Chaos. So a stupid amount of legendary lords, a stupid amount of legendary heroes. This is a faction which got a very tasty rework in Warhammer 3 and made them into an absolute juggernaut of a faction. I am very, very content with the Warriors of Chaos. There's still more to come. There's definitely more to come in the form of DLCs for the Monogods, which are slowly helping out the Warriors of Chaos more and more, introducing more mortal units, mortal lords, mortal heroes, and even legendary heroes in that case. But I feel like the Warriors of Chaos are not going to get a DLC specifically for them anymore. I could be proven wrong, but I feel like they're in just such a good spot. You have Undivided. Then the Undivided faction has 5 different playstyles. Then you've got the Monogod style playstyles too. So if you want to just play as a devoted champion, you can do so too. I really don't think we're going to get more Legendary Lords. Again, could be great to see more, but they're in a very good spot. I'm going to give them an S tier. I know some people would say otherwise, but we pretty much know that we're going to get the Warriors of Chaos fully done by the end of the Monogod DLCs. I feel like they're in a really good place. The DLC Champions of Chaos was a game changer for them. The rework was phenomenal. Now you do build up. You're not just a horde faction, and you can build an empire with your vassals. Sure, vassals could be better off, but I think that's more a fundamental issue with Total War, not so much the Warriors of Chaos faction. Yeah, super happy. If the Khorne, Slaanesh, and potential second Tzeentch DLC finish them up, we're good. Happy, we got everything. And End Times DLC could come in here too, which kind of expecting that at the end, which could introduce like Blight Kings and the Wrathmongers, Skull Reapers, and so on. If that just really finishes them fully off, they could be like S++. I am really happy with Warriors of Chaos. I play them a lot, and it's a faction that I just really am super thankful that they got fixed up for Warhammer 3, because they're one of my favorite factions for the tabletop. I've been painting a lot of Chaos Warriors recently too. For Old World, I've got a Chaos Star tattooed on me and a Slaanesh marking too. It's something that they are so popular, so it's good to see them done. Or, well, close to done. And finally, the Wood Elves, another faction which was introduced in Warhammer 1, wasn't too well liked even with a smaller map. Had to wait for the end of Warhammer 2, essentially, to get a rework. They're better, and you've got a decent amount of playable legendary characters. I'm actually quite impressed with how they are. They're in different locations. They all have the same campaign, though, which is a bit of a negative, mostly because you want a little bit of variety. However, they do play much better. The fact is that you're not just feeling like an absolute boring faction anymore, because they were really bad, man. If you want to see how bad they were, go back to Warhammer 1. Do you remember Amber? That was a fun time. The rosters are pretty set. They do miss a few different lords and heroes, and it would be nice if they had the Law of Athalloran, but I figured that could happen in the future. With that being said, I think I'm going to give them an A tier. It's a massive improvement. Really, what it could be done is just making the factions a little bit different, because they all have the same campaign, and it can be a little bit boring. Even then, Dryker is fine, because she's doing it for her own reasons. Honestly, maybe another legendary lord would be cool, but I would like a legendary hero, just so you have something more to play with. The Law of Athalloran would be great. But yeah, I think this is fairly fair. I think A tier is really good. They're not perfect, but they're close to it, and really just a small change here and there could really get them up and running. Plus, I know I'm not the only one who misses the Law of Athalloran from the tabletop from way back in the day. But yeah, this is pretty much my ranking. The majority of them are in A and S tier, some of them in B, and a few of them in C and D. But I think overall, we're in a very good spot. If the patches that we end up getting in between DLCs are good, then we could see them all jump up. And if the DLCs are going to be in the same styling as Thrones of Decay, we could see them all jump up even further. I think that's a massive thing to consider. I mean, here's hoping in a perfect world, by the end of the franchise, we could have everyone in S and A tier. But so far, so good. Let's hope for the best. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, remember that these are my personal feelings towards each race and faction. Well, each race, we're not done the factions yet, and eventually we will. You guys will have different ideas and rankings. Let me know what you guys think. And once again, thank you so much to Instant Gaming for the sponsorship. It does really help keep the channel going. The giveaway will also be there. Hopefully, we start getting some news soon now that Pharaoh Dynasties is out. It's nice to see people enjoying that. I'm having a little bit of fun with it. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a video on it or not. Mostly because, let's be honest, I'm a Warhammer guy. But, hey, we'll see how it goes. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.